God is the one who is sovereignly raising up these ministries, who's sovereignly raising up intercessors. He's calling people to the ministry of prayer like never before. For some people, that just means an increase in their prayer life. For some people, that means be a part of a house of prayer community. For some people, that means literally be a full-time vocational prayer missionary. And we've talked about that on some previous episodes on this podcast as well. For some watchmen, they are called to literally give their lives and their vocation and their job to being a part of these 24/7 prayer communities, these day and night worship and prayer communities, these prophetic communities that God is going to raise up before the return of Jesus. And by the way, you can't be a watchman on the wall by yourself because we have to sleep. So if God's going to set watchmen on the wall, it means he's going to set us in communities. He's going to set us with other worshipers and other intercessors so that we can do this together day and night, because none of us can literally pray 24/7 on our own. So God is setting watchmen on the wall, which means he's calling us to prayer. It also means he's putting us in relationships with one another so that we can together collectively cry out to him in intercession day and night. He doesn't want us to do it alone. You can't be a watchman on the wall day and night by yourself. You have to do it in the context of community. So he's inviting us into the place of greater expression of prayer, but he's also inviting us into real relationship with one another, these priestly communities of worship and prayer. Now, how does God do this setting? How does he draw us into this? I believe you can see some keys in verse 5, because before God says that he sets watchmen on the wall, here's what he says. He says, as a young man marries a virgin, so shall your sons marry you. And as the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall your God rejoice over you. Right before the ministry of day and night prayer and intercession is introduced, this idea of the bridegroom is introduced, this idea that God is like a bridegroom God and that we are like his people are his bride. And he's saying, I'm going to rejoice over you. I'm going to draw you to me in love. You're not going to get set on the wall in some kind of rote routine job and duty that you have to do. I'm going to woo you in love, and I'm going to through intimacy birth intercession in you. So there's this connection in the scripture between intimacy with God and the role of intercession. God doesn't want us to just throw out our prayer requests to him. He wants us to come close to his heart, to learn what he wants to do, to discover his plans, his purposes, his desires. And that happens as we spend time with him, as we worship him, as we read and study and meditate on his word. Something happens. It's like a place of conception. That happens naturally, right? In the place of intimacy between a husband and wife, there's a conception that happens, and then a baby is born. In the same way, and interestingly, by the way, while I'm recording this, I've got someone texting me pictures of their baby that's being born right now while I'm recording this episode. So interesting, because this same thing happens in the spirit realm when we experience closeness with Jesus, with God, when we experience his presence and we discover what's in his heart, what he wants to do. It comes into our hearts like a seed, and that seed grows and grows, and we begin to yearn and long and desire for that thing to be birthed, the dream of God to be birthed into the earth. And there's even a place of prayer where we travail in prayer like a woman travails in childbirth, where we birth things through our prayers, where the Spirit of God is inside of us groaning and longing for the purposes of God to be birthed in the earth. That's an intimate place. It's not just spiritual fervor, but it's a sweet, intimate place of God's love, where the bridegroom and the bride are in perfect union, where we come into agreement with Jesus and his heart. These are the watchmen God's setting on the wall every day. It's intercessors who are partnered with Jesus, in love with him. It's that we get to be close to him, and we love to be in that place of crying out day and night. There's a sweet place of intercession. Sometimes intercession gets this idea that it's just kind of these fired up Pentecostal kind of people that are yelling at God and trying to get him to do things. But the true biblical place of intercession is a place that's birthed in intimacy. It's based in intimacy with God, of where we fall in love with God and we fall in love with his purposes, and we want what he wants and we hate what he hates. And that unity with him, that agreement with him, begins to cause intercessory prayer to rise up out of us. And it's not forced, but it just flows out of the intimacy we have with God, and the place of his word and the place of his presence and the place of worship gives birth to these cries of intercession day and night. And God, those are the kinds of communities God is raising up. They're rooted in bridal love, this bridal paradigm, this understanding that Jesus is our bridegroom, that he pursues us, he rejoices over us, he delights in us, he longs to have us be with him, which is a place that's full of joy, full of delight, full of freedom. He's saying, I want you to be with me where I am. And as you're with me, I want to partner with you, and you partner with me in releasing my purposes onto the earth through intercession. And God's doing this in individual hearts, and then he's doing it in communities. And he's raising up these communities that are going to cry out day and night, and they're going to release intercession that flows from intimacy with him. And it's going to actually birth God's purposes onto the earth. And it's going to ultimately lead to the very return of Jesus and the end of the age and the culmination of all things. Amazing. This passage in Isaiah is a stunning passage of what God is going to do on the earth. And the cool thing is, we can find ourselves in it. We can be a part of this. We can say, God, set me on the wall. And it starts in the place of intimacy with him. It starts in the place of worship and prayer and love and delight, of being in his word, of being in his presence. And out of that, he begins to birth these prayers and these cries of intercession. And then it starts with setting ourselves in communities. And so I want to urge you, if you're not a part of a praying community, to join one, be a part of one, go to a prayer meeting. Maybe you need to start something and launch something and begin to gather with your friends. Maybe you need to start a house of prayer. Maybe you need to start gathering people for times of worship and intercession right where you are, if you can't find a group to join with. Maybe some of you, God's calling to do this full time in an extravagant way, where you're going to be spending hours every day in the place of prayer and worship and intercession. God's setting watchmen on the wall. And I believe maybe you are called to be one of those watchmen on the wall, where you can actually look in Isaiah 62 verses 6-7 and find yourself in the prophecy of Scripture, and find yourself in the Bible, in what God's doing in the earth right now.